start with a quote today. Yesterday at the opening of the Conference of the Parties in Egypt, COP27, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, "Humanity has a choice, cooperate or perish." He added that the science is clear. Any hope of limiting temperature to 1.5 degrees means achieving global net zero emissions by 2050. But that 1.5 degree goal is on life support, and the machines are rattling. Energy, which combines electricity, heat, and transport, is responsible for around 3/4 of all global emissions. So this is why it is so important for our industry to make systemic, radical change. We're on the way. New companies and solutions are appearing that focus on emissions reductions, and incumbents are even transforming their business models. It's just happening a little more slowly than we need. Regulation continues to block innovation. The gas crisis and global energy crisis have placed many barriers in the way, along with supply chain challenges, skills shortages, and many more, all of which we'll be discussing over the next 3 days. In the IEA's World Energy Outlook, we'll be hearing from one of the main authors in 30 minutes. They found that power generators need to be more responsive, consumers need to be more connected and adaptable, and grid infrastructure needs to be strengthened and digitalized. The report also highlighted that the economic arguments in favor of clean technologies are now stronger. This alignment of economic, climate, and energy security priorities has started to move the dial towards a better outcome for the world's people and the planet. But we still have a long way to go. That's why we put on gridXdays. Obviously, we're not going to solve this in 3 days, but we want to take this opportunity to look back at the progress we've made and at the new challenges that have arisen since the last gridXdays that we put on June last year. We want to ask the hard questions, refocus our efforts on what's really important, and get to the nitty-gritty details of how we can enable systemic and radical change that is necessary to decarbonize energy, mobility, and heating. Education, communication, and making sure that we match science and policy, research and company strategy are some of the key initial steps to this. So in our first session, we deal with how we can best measure and communicate sustainability. I have 2 experts to talk about that with me today. The first is Russell Reichelt, a board member on the Climate Change Authority, which provides expert advice to the Australian government on climate change policy. He is also the Australian Sherpa, which means he represents the Australian Prime Minister at the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, a unique initiative by 17 world leaders who are committed to developing, catalyzing, and supporting solutions for ocean health and wealth. On top of this, Russell is a director of the Great Barrier Reef Foundation. Russell, thank you so much for joining me today, particularly given the big time difference.
Thanks very much, Greta. It's a pleasure to be here, and wonderful to be speaking to you guys on the other side of the globe about such an important issue. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And alongside Russell, we have Sven Wiechert, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at ClimatePartner. Sven has over 20 years experience in digital and brand management and has been a real pioneer in climate action since 2006. ClimatePartner is a solution provider for corporate climate action. They combine individual consulting with a cloud-based software to help customers calculate and reduce carbon emissions and offset residual emissions. This renders products and companies climate neutral, confirmed by their label. Sven, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Greta, for having me. My pleasure.
Great. All right, so without further ado, let's jump straight into the questions. And as a quick reminder, as I mentioned, you can use the chat function to ask your own questions if any come up, and we'll integrate them into the discussion. So straight off, Russell, why is it so important for ocean health that we reduce greenhouse emissions and limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius?
Well, thanks, Greta, for that question. Look, the ocean is our life. The ocean's health underpins the well-being of everyone. And yet I suspect many people don't realize just how much we do depend on the ocean. In plain speak, it feeds us, it entertains us, it connects us, it inspires us and powers our success. But more scientifically, it provides food for 3 billion people. It's a source of protein and nutrition, creates millions of jobs, fishing, tourism, transportation, energy generation, and overall economic growth. So I'm sure the audience, the people online understand the greenhouse gas effect and the fact that the ocean is absorbing most of this excess heat. And 25% of the extra greenhouse gas we're making is also absorbed by the ocean, but it may not be so clear what that means. The ocean drives our weather systems of the planet. When we talk about extreme weather, the atmospheric weather, it's trapping the heat, but the ocean redistributes that heat. So the ocean is driving weather. We're also absorbing that carbon dioxide. The ocean is becoming not only warmer, it's absorbed 93% of all the heat we've generated in the last 150 years. It's absorbing carbon dioxide, which is making it more acid. And you think, well, so what? Well, corals live within 1 degree of their life-sustaining temperature in the tropics. So corals are at extreme risk right now. And one final point is that acidity of the ocean means that soon all the plants and animals, the coccolithophores that drive the whole ecosystem that make calcium-based skeletons, won't be able to make them. We're on the cusp of a radical change in the structure of our ocean's biodiversity. We may already be too late for that, but we need to try very hard. That's why it's important we get these emissions down. Thanks, Greta.
And on the flip side of that, Russell, can you shed a little bit of light how ocean-based mitigation can help us close the emissions gap?
Yeah, sure. Look, there's a good study done for the Climate Summit back in 2019. There's really 5 areas of ocean action that we really need to pull out all the stops. First one, ramp up offshore renewable energy. There is almost unlimited opportunity. Cost is an issue, but in technical terms, we can radically increase the amount of offshore renewable energy. There appears to be no relevant limit to it. And there have been some good estimates done by the IEA and ARENA and experts, Boschel and others, to show we could increase our terawatt hours per year to 6 to 23 times more than the current total global electricity consumption. So that's very large, and we'd get benefits of cost reductions. 2, decarbonize all maritime transport. That's how we move things around if our maritime fleets were a country, they'd be 3% of the global emissions, but that's a critical thing. We decarbonize transport, decarbonize fishing fleets and aquaculture, protect and restore coastal carbon storage areas is the 4th one. And we do need to look at all opportunities, including the sequestration of greenhouse gases under the seabed. So there's 5 things with top priority, if actioned, could actually address 20% of the reductions we need by 2050 to meet the Paris Agreement.
Thank you so much for that, Russ. I think there's some really interesting things in there that a lot of people don't really think about. And I do want to go into more detail about some of those. But first, I just want to ask Sven, companies play an important role in mitigating the effects of climate change. Why is it so crucial for companies to decarbonize? Should corporate sustainability focus on emissions reductions, or is this too narrow? A lot to dig in there.
Okay, thanks for these questions. You already quoted Guterres from yesterday, from the opening of the COP27. I would like to add one quote on this. He also said, we are on the highway to hell. We are on the highway to climate hell. And to answer your question, why is it so crucial for companies? Basically, for me, the short answer is decarbonize or die. So why decarbonize or die? We basically have to decarbonize everything, the whole society, the whole economy, and which then for sure means for companies and all companies, they have to remove the emissions. And so the question is just when and not if. And so we would strongly recommend to lead and not to follow. And in the end, you might be too late, and other have taken over your business. So we strongly recommend to act now. If it's not for the environment, then do it for a sustainable business, because business won't be any longer sustainable if you don't decarbonize. And you also already mentioned the 3/4. The energy sector is responsible for 3/4. And if you then drill down further, you see that the energy use in the industry takes the major part of it with 24%. And here you can see the important role of companies within decarbonization. And coming to your second question, if corporate sustainability should be the focus on emission reduction, or if it's too narrow. So if we're talking about carbon or greenhouse gas emissions, I would say, yes, this should be the clear focus. But if you have a broader look, so I like the model of the planetary boundaries. And here we have much more to consider than just carbon. So there are different more topics within the planetary boundaries that we for sure have to also consider.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to Russ, why is one of the Ocean Panel's goals to increase renewable energy by 40 times? And I also just want to connect that with something that you said before about offshore renewable energy, and there's so much potential for that. It sounds great. What are the barriers? Why aren't we already doing that?
Yeah, well, look, thanks. And we are, it's well underway. And when the panel began in 2018, at the same time as it began, several very large companies declared there to be an offshore renewable energy action coalition. I think it was Equinor, a couple of other ones, and it rapidly grew. This is before they began in the Northeast, as they were ramping up in the Northeast coast of the USA and places more global than just around the Europe coasts. So there's a lot of movement on that, and things have changed a lot in those couple of years. The 40 times came from a cost benefit analysis that was done for the panel, and it was published in a report. Again, in 2020, when the panel released its Transformations for a Sustainable Ocean Economy. And it was seen as an optimistic goal then. The cost benefit still looked really good. And it was more cost effective than looking, there's still some cost challenges with tidal and wave and other forms of ocean energy. But since then, the IRENA and IEA, I think IEA estimated 570 gigawatts of offshore wind could be installed by 2040. An OECD scenario had 900 gigawatts by 2050, and IRENA had the remap scenario of 1,000 gigawatts by 2050. So it made the panels, what they thought was an ambitious thing, actually look, the things have moved on since that 40 was coming out. But look, in Greta, I'd just say that the panel's goal is not just about production. It's about protect the ocean, sustainably produce, and prosper equitably. And you need energy for all of those things. You need almost unlimited, cheap, renewable energy. It's the recipe to do what Sven just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sven, decarbonisation is slowly becoming a bit of a trendy thing for companies, and we're seeing carbon offsets everywhere. How can we combat greenwashing and ensure that initiatives like carbon offset projects are truly sustainable?
Good question, Greta. So I would say the public, the society is demanding more and more that it's not just about offsetting, but that it's about reduction and avoidance. And we need really transparency here. So each company has to be very, very transparent where they are on their journey. They don't have to be perfect right from the start, but should tell very frankly where they are, what are the objectives, and what are they planning. And so transparency is key here. Asked about the carbon offsets and greenwashing, it's super important to stress that offsetting itself is not the solution, but high quality offsets are part of the solution. We can discuss if it's a big or a small part, but it's a part, but not the solution. This is very important to understand. And if you make carbon offsets, then it's super important that you have high quality carbon offsets. So there was just a documentary about the soccer world championship in Qatar, and they made their own thing regarding the offset. So this is crucial. This might be greenwashing, but if you take it seriously, then it's an important element. Another big plus is that you basically put a price on carbon and on greenhouse gas emissions as soon as you offset, which again will drive initiatives within the companies. If you see that round about just 7% of companies just are taking climate action at all, meaning that 93% doing nothing at all, it's super important that all the companies start to do something. And there is a worrisome trend which is called greenhushing. So companies are fearful to talk about their climate action activities because they're afraid of being criticized. And this is not good, because we need a discussion on climate action. The climate leaders should inspire and motivate the rest of their industry to move on.
Yeah, because surely doing something is better than nothing, right?
Absolutely. And you shouldn't claim that you are doing more than you are actually doing. Be open, be very transparent, go on reduction and avoidance, and tell where are you standing on your climate action journey. Yeah,
absolutely. And Russell, you were nodding in vehement agreement at one of the points about carbon offset projects. Do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, the quality of offsets is critical. But, you know, I was also wanting to nod just then, Greta and Sven, that you don't have to convince all the people at once. The theory of change tells you that if you can get the 5, 10, not even 10% of early adopters, there's suddenly a tip over event, you know, when the iceberg suddenly flips over, and so it would pay all those who are looking to achieve this change is to support those early leaders, encourage them. Perhaps you know, look for anything like market-based incentives if you're in policy making, or ways to actually encourage that leadership, that there is a prosperous, better future for everybody. And I'm confident that will happen. So we need to back those leaders, Greta. That was what I was thinking as you were finishing up there, Sven.
Yeah, I would like to totally agree on that. So we saw this in different industries where you had like the market leaders starting, and then there is something like a competition about who is promising the most. So for sure, action has to follow these promises, but still it's very good that if the CEOs battle in climate action, this is a battle that we need.
Yeah, we want to race to the top, not the bottom.
Right.
Yeah. And Russell, you just mentioned leaders, and the Ocean Panel brings together 17 leaders from different nations. How challenging is it to align these different interests and ensure that all of the voices in the panel are heard?
Well, you'll be surprised. I wish it was so difficult, but in fact, it's been quite easy in this forum. And it's because, well, firstly, it's not a United Nations body. The members are the people who are the heads of state, not the country. They're not negotiating treaties. They're And the most common, I should say there's 17 members, 9 of them are from the less developed world and 8 are from the highly developed. Together, they're 50% of the national jurisdiction of the oceans territories, the exclusive economic zones, 50%. Recently, France and US joined, who are the number 1 and 2 in the size of the jurisdiction. But it's the fact that, to give you a story, we would be, the Sherpas, as they call us, would be in a discussion about what can we offer to our principals as some good ideas. And I would be talking about, sustainable development of the offshore wind energy or illegal fishing, stopping it. And in the coffee break, my Kenyan friend, who was the advisor to the Kenyan Prime Minister, pulled me aside and said, Russell, when I talk to my principal about how do we get change, he wants to know about war, famine, poverty, anger. So our issues are different, but I'm just telling you that privately. I'm sure Ruth wouldn't mind me saying it. We had a very open conversations, and it really is about finding that common ground. And you'd be surprised how much there is. And especially if you focus on equity, prospering equitably. It's built into the Paris Agreement, but you have to do that and actually listen to all the voices and help them. And there's Ocean Action 2030 is helping the developing countries implement sustainable ocean plans by redirecting sustainable finance from the Green Climate Fund. There are several new funds in the international financial institutions. So providing the resources to those people, and then the donor countries know that their donations are going to people who are very motivated to achieve those goals. So we've found that aligning those interests and the voices, but you have to have open ears and you have to work towards equity as well as prosperity. And don't forget good science and sharing that knowledge. And I must mention, Greta, Indigenous voice is another voice that must be heard. The First Nations people are critical, including their traditional knowledge. It sits alongside and was there before our Western science. So we listen to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a point that often gets forgotten, sadly, but very important to bring it up. Sven, when we talk about that equity, obviously companies are at different stages of their development. People don't always want to pay a premium for sustainability. How can we ensure that all companies can decarbonize and that is equitable across the full spectrum of industry? And also that people, do they have to pay a premium for sustainability, or can we kind of align economic and corporate interests?
Mm-hmm. So I think for companies, we have seen with the pandemic and now with the energy crisis, how vulnerable the supply chains are and how dependent we are. So if you build up sustainable supply chains, which is, I think, happening right now, and the true costs, for example, for energy are now on the table, we can see that from a sustainable business perspective, it doesn't necessarily have to be more expensive. So we have clients who invested in the past in the latest energy equipment, in the latest transport utilities, in modern cooling systems. And with the savings they are making now, you see that sustainable solutions doesn't necessarily have to be more expensive. Having looked from the consumer side, I think also there more and more end consumer understands that meat for a couple of cents or pennies in the supermarket isn't sustainable at all, and a pair of jeans for 10 euro. So more and more consumer understands that this is not sustainable. At the same time, the premium cannot be too high, because if it's too high, then it will stay in the niche. But we need here the whole population. But I think with the fossil fuel prices going up and the renewable energy prices going down, I hope that in future, this is already the case with solar, for example, there mustn't be a price premium. We also see this for end consumer with plant-based meat. The prices are going down and level with like real meat. And then I think we are in a very good situation. Also talking about circular economy, refurbished products get more and more attractive to a lot of consumers. So these are very good trends here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sven. And we only have a few minutes left, so I really want to get into the grit of the topic about communication. Russell, what are some of the greatest challenges in translating science-based research into expert advice that can then be translated into policy?
I think the greatest challenge is encapsulated in that question, Greta, in terms of translating something, handing it across with a bow wrapped around it as perceived knowledge and wisdom for you to digest as a policymaker. The challenge is to find scientists who are comfortable working from the concept stage through to the operational production phase for an industrial process or a design of a marine park, the delivery and its management, the monitoring of it. So it's essential of integrating science and indigenous knowledge into the understanding of everybody, all stakeholders, those affected by possible regulation, and industries who are adapting to the need to take on sustainability goals. So it's that integration of science and a spirit of the scientists to be listening to what people are saying the problem is instead of solving their pet problem over here. So it's that integration is the challenge, but there are many scientists that do this well, is the good news.
Yeah, that's good. That is good to hear. And Russell, what about using science-based targets to inform sustainable strategies for companies?
Is that for Sven or for me?
Sorry, for Sven.
Okay, so science-based targets are really great because it's currently like the highest standard, and it gives a big plus because the companies are sure and have the secureness that they are doing the right things and that they are on the right track. So we are super happy to help a lot of big clients on their way with working with science-based targets, and these can work something like a North Star. At the same time, we have to have climate action from a lot of companies, and for big majority of companies, science-based targets might currently not be the best solution because it's 2 steps too far for them, but we also need something like to democratize climate action. And so here it's good to go with them with a very pragmatic approach. And if each company, for example, switches to renewables, which is unfortunately not the case today, and there are a lot of other quick wins, then we have already a lot achieved.
And final question quickly, how can we communicate the urgency of climate action for both of you? Final words.
I'll just say briefly, it's about the messaging must be authentic, well science founded and inclusive, and the urgency comes with the understanding of everybody about the changes that are happening very rapidly, and so I think credibility, integrity of delivery, transparency of where you got your information, and inclusive, and painting a picture of a better future, a prosperous future. It's not, you will have to change, we all have to change, but there is a better way, and we should all be equitably prospering from the change. Absolutely.
Sven?
So we always call for start your climate action journey. If you haven't done so, and start with measuring your footprint, because just the numbers that you know you can manage. So simply start, and the rest will follow. You make learnings, and it is a journey, but you have to start on this now.
Absolutely. So let's get started. Thank you so much, Russell and Sven. That was a really interesting discussion. We'll be putting all of the sessions online after the event. But thanks for taking the time today, and have a great day. Up next will be, thank you. We will have Yasmin Arsalane, Senior Power Sector Analyst at the IEA, uncovering some of the major findings of their recent World Energy Report. And we'll be back in 1 minute.